Hey YouTube people, Evan here with Spawnwave Media. I'm just dropping in because recently Pokemon Go dropped a pretty major patch, tons of new stuff going on in it, sort of the upgrade to Gold and Silver. And as a person who kind of stopped playing for a while there due to just general life things and other games that became more important, I felt that maybe there were others like me who kind of wanted to get back into it now that they've heard about the new Pokemon coming in and all the new functions the game's starting to gain back. And I really wanted to give you guys an update on what you could expect by opening the game up for maybe the first time in a while, blow the cobwebs and dust off it and take another look. First, I want to go over the patch notes. Number one, right up there at the top, we got the 80 additional Pokemon, over 80 rather. New evolutions for the originals, whole new sets of Pokemon. They already added the baby Pokemon in prior to this, but it's just extra stuff. But that's at least step one of getting you to get back out there looking for more Pokemon. I will say though that in my meanderings around the internet, I have found that if anyone's familiar with them, the unknown Pokemon has some interesting mechanics. It's sort of mostly just hearsay at this point. I remember reading somewhere that they would only be findable in certain areas. Specifically that only individual unknown type Pokemons would be findable in certain nests all over the world. So if you have one of the nests for the L-shaped one near your house, maybe you'd have to travel to Europe to get a different shaped one as well. And they're all individual in the game, to the point where if you can catch all of them, that's a badge. You get kind of bonuses for that type of stuff. Now this sucks for now, because in my travels around here, I haven't found any, and that kind of annoys me a little bit, but it's also good for, I guess, the future when maybe trading comes into play properly, whenever, that'll happen. I will say though, with what I've been reading about them appearing in Singapore, it seems like maybe they're not part of nests, that they're just super rare spawns, but only time will tell with that. Then of course new legendaries are most likely in the game. I think they're supposed to be in the code somewhere, but we haven't even really caught the legendaries from the prior game, not properly at least. The ones that were caught were found to be hacks, so, bans all around for that stuff. Next up, we got the gender-specific Pokemon. If you're familiar with Gold and Silver, or anything really past that, you'll be familiar with Pokemon breeding. If you want better stats, or maybe you want a Shadow-type ability on a Pokemon that normally doesn't get it, that's how you do it. In its current state, though, this feels like it's mostly just groundwork for possibly that in the future, but we're not seeing it as of right now. They also added new encounter mechanics, in particular individual type dodging for certain types of Pokemon. So far, I've noticed several that feel very individual to the certain type of Pokemon and what it has at its disposal for like movement, whether it's got a little propeller on top of its head or something along those lines. But I have also noticed, I guess, recycled ones, which is fine. And then next up, to make those encounters a little bit more streamlined, they made it so that you can actually select different types of berries or different types of Pokeballs very easily in the actual menu that you're using to see the Pokemon you're trying to capture. So no going into your bag and scrolling down, that's all gone. And along the lines for the berries, there's two new ones. First up, you got the Nanab berry, whatever you want to call it really. I call it the berry that I throw in the trash so that I can put more stuff in my bag, because all it really does is it prevents the Pokemon you're trying to capture from really kind of jutting around often or trying to attack you, and I've never really had a problem with that. The next one is the big one, because it's a little rare to get from a Pokestop, but you definitely want it, the Pineapple berry. It increases the amount of candy a Pokemon you are trying to capture will drop. This is of course very important for the rare ones. Now onto the little bit more microtransaction-y side of things. They've added a ton of new outfits and avatar items. Most free-to-play games go this route, so I can't really blame them. It definitely gives me something to really go for if I start winning in a bunch of different gyms and start collecting, and if those gyms get maintained for a good period of time, then I can work towards these items. Personally, I still feel it's a little more important to drop those items on lures and lucky eggs, but that's just because I'm trying to still get to endgame, which will probably take forever since I'm not really heavily focusing on that. That's not really a big worry for me right now. But from what I've seen in the cosmetics menu, they haven't really gone all in with just hundreds and hundreds of things yet. It's still very limited. And some of the items are even locked behind player level, which is kind of interesting to me, but it also gives you something to strive for when you're trying to level your character. One of the main things that really grabbed my attention though on these patch notes, apparently now we're able to get more candy from capturing evolved Pokemon. Now I haven't tracked this for the past week. I have caught a few evolved ones. I think maybe it only adds like a couple, maybe 3 more on top of it. I'm not too sure. It wasn't something I was really looking for when I was playing originally. I just remember this is one of the biggest complaints in the online community. Why would I want to capture a more difficult thing to catch if it's going to be weaker than an evolved version of one of my lower end ones, and it doesn't give me any greater benefit towards evolving one of them? Even though it does feel a little late, it's at least good to know that they're trying to listen and trying to get all this stuff together to make the game more enjoyable for its player base. Past these notes, I mean, all they really did was add new music, if you're into that kind of thing, a new night mode map, which I guess changes the visual aspect of the game at night, so that's kind of cool. They made it more stable on the Apple Watch, which, you know, if you got that going for you, that's fantastic. Various bug fixes, who really knows what those are, maybe they got a list somewhere for that type of stuff, and the main meme of all the Pokemon Go patch notes, minor text fixes. Now, I've spent a week with this patch so far, and there's definitely some great quality of life improvements that have happened. One of the big ones, and anybody who's played this game who stopped and might come back to it without knowing this, it's going to be one of the greatest things you'll hear. You can select multiple Pokemon in your Pokemon menu and then transfer them in bulk. So, you know, get to clearing out your Pidgeys and whatnot. Other things I've noticed, they've added, for branching evolutions and advanced evolutions, they've added the rare items from Gold and Silver back in, you know, things like the Metal Coat. That was pretty cool to find out. And for a while there, I was trying to figure out when they were going to kind of put them into the game, how I was going to get them, like what was that going to be about. It wasn't until about halfway through my week-long playtest with this game up till now that I found out that it was Pokestops that are supposed to drop these things. Now, this is kind of an issue for me. One, because that further screws over rural players, and I double-checked the Reddit, and yes, it's still ablaze with, I live in the middle of nowhere, why does this game hate me? And two, because I do kind of live in a rural area, but I have a small township near me with a college, so like that's kind of tightly packed with Pokestops and gyms and all that nonsense. It's like 2 minutes from my house. And I've been trying to get there almost every day since release to refill my bags, which were pretty light on all the stuff that I kind of needed to continue playing. So in doing the math, about 25 Pokestops, I would walk the streets 2 laps. I did it for maybe like 5 days. That's 250 hits of Pokestops, give or take, depending on whether or not I accidentally skipped one due to there being a random Pokemon nearby that I'd prefer to get instead. And I can safely say, 0 evolution items. This has got to suck for rural players. I think still in my wildest fantasy for this game, they're going to add stuff in that we don't have to walk to or go to actually interact with. Maybe like a weekly dungeon to do or some kind of thing along that line. I mean, here's hoping, right? And I do feel like that would be a great filler for the people who don't have the ability to go down to such and such place to, you know, double check on their gym, hit up the 3 Pokestops, grab a sandwich, and go home. I feel like they still need a way to functionally participate within the Pokemon Go world. Hopefully we see something down the lines in terms of that. That'd be great. Just know that we here at Spawnwave are rooting for you, everyone out in the middle of nowhere. Your day will come. Other than that, John over here talked me into picking up Pokemon Go Plus. He wanted me to check it out, see maybe what the benefits are of it in the current setup with the whole like 25-mile-an-hour limit when playing the game. I remember for the longest time reading patch notes that involved stability enhancements for it and all these other issues people were bringing up with it, kind of canceling your Bluetooth out and you have to reset it and all this stuff. It sounded like an utter mess for a $35 device. I've been toying with it for a week, and I think at this point I can safely say it's a good purchase if you have $35 that you don't know what to spend on. It's a weird mix of pluses and minuses. On one hand, it's great because if you're just kind of in a car being driven somewhere and you want to play the game and the game's like, screw you, dude, the Pokemon Go Plus function actually picks up the Pokemon that are near you and allows you to at least attempt to catch them through that system. Arguably not the best because it kind of random dice rolls what's happening and you don't actually get to control the positives and negatives of curveball throwing, landing it in the great circle and all that. But then, on the other hand, what a buddy of mine and I noticed, at least today when we were driving around, was how unresponsive the program is with the device. In particular, we attempted a quick lap around my local main street where we set the program to only tell him when the Pokestops were nearby, and I was going, well within the speed limit of the program working if you were doing it manually anyway. We just really wanted to see if it would pick everything up. I think in one run, it only picked up about 6 of the 25 Pokestops, and of those 6, it only actually worked with 3 of them for some reason. I'm not too sure why. At first, I wanted to write it off as, well, maybe we left their area after it picked it up and for some reason it got it stuck that way. Maybe that's why it didn't do it. But the day before when we were testing it, it was something we noticed that it picked up a Pokestop I had driven by, maybe about like 5 seconds after, and then he hit the button and I continued moving away from it and it was pretty far away and it still got me all the stuff from the Pokestop. Now, maybe this is more of like a server issue, a timeout thing. That's definitely something they really need to look into. All in all, though, I see the game moving in a good direction. Hopefully it kind of picks up the pace a little bit. I mean, these guys are making Metric tons of money, supposedly, off of doing this. I know a good percentage of it goes to Nintendo and Game Freak and all that. But I do clearly remember shortly after Pokemon Go dropping and the announcement of the ridiculous amounts of money they were earning, I remember their Twitter account posting immediately a very high production value trailer for their other game. I don't know. It feels a little bit like, hey, we're glad you guys like this, and thank you for all this money, but we do want you to kind of pay attention to Ingress because that's our game. That's the game that we really focused on. So we're going to, take a ton of this money, and instead of developing stuff you guys are all asking for, we're going to try to get you to move to this other game too and enjoy both at the same time. I don't know. It felt a little weird to me. But dueling and trading still hinted at as coming early this year, hopefully, fingers crossed, because those are the functions I really want to see. I'm pretty sure John really wants to see them too. It's something we've been waiting for since the moment Pokemon Go was announced. And hey, if you recently came back to the game as well and you've noticed anything different that maybe I didn't pick up on yet, leave us a comment. Let me know, because it's something I am interested in. I will be playing this game for a little bit. Maybe as patches come out, we might do a short little overview of at least the major ones. I mean, there's so many that come out that are like, oh, bug fixes, this no longer works, and minor text fixes. I don't think we're going to care about that much. Well, that's my time. You've been listening to Evan with Spawnwave Media. Don't hesitate to take a look around, check out some of our other videos. We do a lot of news, a lot of updates, a lot of tech stuff. If you find that you like that kind of material, toss us a subscribe. I'm super grateful for it. Until next time, everybody.